When we think about history, we usually think about facts and figures, right? Dates, battles, official records. But how do we get to the truth of an experience, especially one as completely shattering as the First World War? Today, we're going to look at how a generation of poets completely tore up the rulebook to tell a new and much more brutal kind of truth.
So, let's start with that big question. How do you really tell the truth about war? Is it in the history books, with all their statistics and their strategies, or is it somewhere else? Well, these poets argued it was found in a totally different kind of testimony. Okay, so let's be clear what we're talking about here. War poetry isn't just describing a battle. No, it's a literary response. It's trying to capture the psychological and the moral truths of what it was like to live through it. And, this is the crucial part, it almost always challenges the official stories. The ones that talk about glory and noble sacrifice. And this gets us to our first big idea, thinking of this poetry not just as art, but as a really vital form of testimony. Because, you see, where an official archive records events, poetry records feelings. It preserves an emotional history. We're talking about the terror, the bone-deep exhaustion, the incredible bonds of comradeship. These are the things that statistics can never, ever capture. But a poem? A poem can make you feel it right in your gut. So why does all this matter so much? What made this kind of poetic testimony so revolutionary and, honestly, so essential? This slide really gets to the heart of it. You had these two competing stories about the war. On one side, you've got the official myth, the propaganda machine, right? War is about glory, heroism, noble sacrifice. But on the other side, you have the poetic truth that the soldiers were actually living. And that story was about trauma, futility, and the raw inner life of a human being pushed to the absolute limit. This poetry became so incredibly powerful because it was doing like 4 essential things all at once. It turned soldiers from just numbers back into human beings. It directly attacked the patriotic propaganda. It created this emotional archive for all of us. And yeah, it forces us, even today, to ask some really hard questions about the true cost of conflict. And this is where it gets really fascinating. The poets of World War I didn't just change what they wrote about, they completely changed how they wrote. The very structure of the poem, the form itself, became a way to express the feeling of war. I mean, really think about it for a second. How do you actually translate the pure chaos and horror of a trench or a gas attack onto a quiet piece of paper? How do you make a reader, sitting safe and sound at home, truly feel that panic and that brutality? The old, pretty styles of poetry just weren't going to cut it. Okay, so here's the before picture. This is Rupert Brooke, writing pretty early in the war. The rhythm is steady, predictable, the feeling is noble, patriotic. It's all very clean, very orderly. It's a romantic idea of dying for your country. Now, just hold that sound in your head. And then, there's this, Wilfred Owen. Suddenly, that steady rhythm is gone. It's just shattered. It's replaced by these short, panicked shouts. Gas, gas. The language itself is clumsy, desperate, an ecstasy of fumbling. Do you feel that difference? The form itself is having a panic attack. It's pure chaos. And that was the whole point. That was the genius of it. These poets intentionally, on purpose, shattered the beautiful, orderly structures of old-school poetry. Why? To mirror the fragmented, mechanical, and brutal chaos of the first truly modern industrial war. The broken form was the message. All right, let's dive into the most famous example of this to see exactly how it works. We're going to break down Wilfred Owen's absolute masterpiece, Dulce et Decorum Est. So the poem opens, and we're not seeing heroes marching tall. We're seeing this. Men who should be young and strong are described as old beggars and hags. Right from the very first line, Owen is just demolishing that myth of the glorious soldier. And this is where Owen's genius really clicks into place. It's all about the tension. He builds this very traditional structure with a regular rhyme scheme and a controlled rhythm, but he fills that elegant container with the most unstructured, chaotic horror you can imagine. It's such a brilliant move. He's using a controlled, poetic frame to show you a reality where all human control is completely lost. Just think about that for a second. He is taking the traditional tools of poetry, the things you normally use to create beauty, like similes and imagery and rhythm, and he's aiming them like a weapon squarely at unimaginable ugliness. He's making beauty describe something grotesque so you can never forget it.
And the whole poem builds to this absolutely devastating final punch. After forcing you to watch a man literally drown in his own lungs from the gas, Owen turns and speaks directly to the reader. He calls you my friend, and he says if you had seen what I've seen, you would never again repeat the old lie, Dulce et Decorum Est, pro patria mori. He takes that noble Latin phrase, it is sweet and fitting to die for one's country, and just exposes it as a vicious, hollow lie.
Now, this revolution, it didn't just stay in the trenches. It created this lasting echo that would go on to change literature forever. You can really trace the whole chain of events pretty clearly. First, these poets experience a new kind of war, this industrial horror. Then, they realize the old ways of writing poetry are completely useless for describing it. So they shatter those forms, creating something new, fragmented and harsh. And that act of shattering, that helps kickstart the entire literary movement we now call modernism. And look, if there is one thing to take away from all of this, let it be this. The poets of the Great War proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that when you're trying to tell the truth, how you tell the story is every bit as important as the story itself. The form isn't just decoration, it's part of the meaning.
Which leaves us with a final question to kind of chew on. A century ago, poetry bore witness. It gave testimony when the official channels wouldn't or couldn't. So as we look at the conflicts of today, and the ones yet to come, we have to ask, who or what is going to bear witness for our time?